Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to today's live broadcast of the 2017 Mazda Global Challenge here at Mazda Raceway, Laguna Seca in Monterey, California. It's a beautiful fall weekend. Once again, here in the booth, my name is Tony Laporta, and I'm joined by Mo Murray from Mazda Motorsports, and we're about to go down to pit lane, where from IndyCar Radio Network, Jake Query is going to tell us how things look, and more importantly, how they feel before we go racing here in the final race of the weekend.
Tony, thanks. How'd they look? Spectacular. It's always great to be here in the Monterey Peninsula at the Mazda Raceway at Laguna Seca. How they feel? Warm. But that will change just a little bit over the course of the next 45 or so minutes. This area of the country cools down significantly as the sun starts to set, and we'll see how that affects these identically matched Mazda MX-5 cars. Now, you can bet this much. The action is what will be hot, because this is race number 2 of 2 races today with $75,000 on the line. Let's talk about what happened in race number 1. We thought the winner was Patrick Gallagher, the season champion, because he was the first to bring his MX-5 machine to the checkered flag. But race officials decided otherwise. That's because it was determined that he gained an on-track advantage by getting his tires to the outside of the racetrack. Think of it in baseball analogy. You can't go outside the base paths. That's exactly what it was determined that Patrick Gallagher did. Cost him a spot. As a result, it is Cressy that gets the win. Gallagher now is second. You can bet that that factors into the aggression here in race number 2, because as you guys are about to talk about, this is not just your typical 1-2 doubleheader. This is one with a point system that leads to cash, not sponsorship money, but rather cash for the drivers themselves to take home. Who will it be? It's going to be a lot of fun to find out. But Mo and Tony, the reality is there are points that come into play, but you still want to finish towards the front. Going to be a lot of fun here.
Yeah, Jake, no doubt it's going to be a lot of fun. And there's a great shot right there, Mo, of this beautiful racetrack, Mazda Raceway, Laguna Seca. And Jake did a really good job of setting it up, and the guys in the truck had a really good replay for us. It wasn't the contact on that final lap that sent Robbie Foley around. That's not what Patrick Gallagher got penalized for. What he got penalized for was dipping those left side tires below the white line, gaining the position, and then taking over the lead. So that's basically where we're at. That's why we saw the 1 position penalty in post-race.
And actually, to be fair to Patrick, there wasn't any contact. He was clean around the outside of him, but he had committed an offense on the way up the hill by getting all 4 tires off the racetrack, and that earned him a penalty. Brian Ortiz and Robbie Foley, they did have contact, and why there isn't a penalty for that, I'm not quite sure. Mazda Raceway, you mentioned, beautiful, absolutely this time of night, this with the sun going down over the Pacific, not far from here. It is spectacular here. And of course, Mazda Raceway is celebrating its 60th year as one of the premier road racing facilities in the world, if not North America.
Oh, absolutely, and it's fun because we've got so many international drivers here coming to compete with us. You know, we highlighted a few of the Japanese drivers during race number 1, competing with Macumbi McAleer Racing. He's our only entry from Europe. It's Bart Wubin, and it was funny, Mo, because when I spoke to Bart, we asked him, what do you think about the track? What do you think about the competition here? And he talked about Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca, and he talked about the corkscrew, and he goes, it's scary. And it's funny because each session he's gotten braver and braver, and he's gotten faster and faster. So as we get ready to go here, we're under a slight delay. Cars getting ready to come out to pit lane. But as Jake talked about, this isn't your traditional 1-2 doubleheader. Race 1 ran already earlier this afternoon, where we saw Matt Cressy be awarded the win after post-race penalties were handed out. That means he earns 1 point. And low point total wins at the end of this whole thing. So Patrick Gallagher can still get out of here with that $75,000 first place prize. He has to win this race that we're gridding up for, and then he has to either see Matt Cressy have some bad luck, but if Cressy's able to finish second, the tiebreaker, what determines the winner, will be second race results. So if Gallagher wins it, he wins the tiebreaker.
And that's true. And for those of you watching this or watching from around the world, earlier today we had folks from New Zealand, from Puerto Rico, from Europe, watching our feed. For those of you watching this feed, this is brought to you by our good friends at Lucas Oil Racing TV. And we have enough time now. There's a slight delay, so we have enough time to give Lucas Oil Racing TV a little shout-out.
So as cars now on track, making their way through the infield section here, turns 3 and 4, and Mo, they'll head underneath the Mother's Polished Bridge, and that's such a great shot. And this is exciting. I'm jacked up, I'm ready to go, Mo, but I'm feeling a little sad because it's been a great 2017 on the Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup, which is the regular season championship, and then this, an exhibition race to promote the incredibly close competitive nature of Mazda MX-5 Cup racing. We ran our first race this afternoon. This is our second race of the day. It's our final race of the weekend, and it's our last race of the season. I don't want it to be over, Mo. Tell me it's not over.
Well, I can tell you this. Off seasons get shorter and shorter and shorter, and pretty soon we'll be joining at a venue yet to be announced. We're working on the 2018 schedule to see the 2018 version of the Battery Tender MX-5 Cup presented by BF Goodrich Tires. Grid is a little bit different for this race because it's been set by the second fastest time of each driver. We still have Nico Rager in front, telling us that he had the 2 fastest times in the qualifying session from yesterday. He's followed by Robbie Foley and Patrick Gallagher, our 2 combatants from the first race. Luke Oxner, fantastic race in the first go-around earlier today. And Brian Ortiz representing everybody in Puerto Rico. And our thoughts, of course, are with the folks of Puerto Rico and the challenge they've had with weather recently. And then 7th place on the grid, Kyle Kaiser, current Indy Lights champion, stepped over into these fendered cars for the first time. And he had a little trouble first time out. Let's see how he does this afternoon.
We are gridded up 2 by 2, ready to go racing, folks, for the final time today and for the final time in 2017. The Global MX-5 Cup cars wind out of turn 11, and Nico Rieger is going to get another shot at a green flag in the air, and they're already jumping out 2 by 2, and Patrick Gallagher wants to make it 3 wide. They want to try and go 4 wide up at the top of the hill. Gallagher's going to get a shove from Brian Ortiz as they fly through turn 1, down into turn 2. Jake Query, we're off and racing.
I'll tell you what, this is exactly what we expected to see, was it not? And the fact that I heard someone earlier say, boy, the gloves are going to come off. No doubt about it. The sand is going to kick up. And again, keep in mind, we've got contact back in the field. 2 cars, 3 cars involved. One of them spins all the way around. We'll get a better look at it here and ID who was involved. This happened about 3/4 of the way back of the pack. And indeed, Keith Jensen finds himself facing in the wrong direction. And that Mazda MX-5 now sits as the field works its way now under a caution.
And unfortunately, I may be wrong, but unfortunately the other 2 cars involved, we'll get confirmation now. Yes, it's one of our Japanese visitors, number 56.
That's Takashi Oi.
Takashi Oi, and I think Yamano's car was also involved, which is a tough day for our visitors from Japan who came a long way for this race.
Boy, you had talked about it and the fact that all of a sudden they're going 3 wide. The reality is, 3 wide you can perhaps do. You start to go 4 wide, or you get a little bit of air underneath that car, and all of a sudden, all it takes, Tony, let's be honest, is one of them to get loose, and it's going to, in those close quarters, start collecting others behind you.
Well, I'm sure they're working on pulling up a replay, but from my recollection, what I could best see was coming out of turn 2 as they got redirected and pointed in the right direction. Keith Jensen was on the far driver's right-hand side. His right side tires were down off the gravel, and as he attempted to come back and put all 4 BF Goodrich's back on the asphalt, there was already the front bumper of another MX-5 Cup there, and you can't share the same piece of real estate in these cars, and he just kept coming. That car didn't give way, and that's what sent Keith Jensen around and into the Japanese cars.
The other thing that happens, too, you talk about those BF Goodriches. We know how good the grip is. It doesn't mean it's grip that's necessarily designed to be on kitty litter. So all of a sudden, you get out there, you get half of your, let's say, half your tires on the pavement, on the surface, the other half, all of a sudden then you just get, you're kind of become a passenger at that point, and you are at the mercy of where the car is going to go. That's the case here, and it has caused a disruption here in the first lap of this race number 2 at Laguna Seca.
Keith Jensen, of course, from Florida. He's a lawyer, and he runs for 6 Sideways, one of the premier teams in the series, owned by John Dean. Here's a replay. You can see Keith is well off the road.
He had a lot more than just his right side off.
In fact, he came on and tagged both of the Japanese entrants at the same time.
Just absolutely nowhere to go there for those 2. You know, you're sitting there and somebody's darting across a couple of lanes, and there's not much you can do at that point. Good news is, as they, of course, Keith Jensen's day is going to be done. But, you know, Mo, we talk about these cars and the fact that they're identically set up as we see cars coming down to pit road, seeing what they can't do to try to get themselves back out into the race should they be able to make any changes or repairs, just iron things out. But safety paramount in this series as well, and always looking to make sure, yet another example of the fact that you always want to make sure that these cars are safe.
Yeah, and Takeshi Oi is a journalist in Japan. He came over here and arranged to ride with Winding Road Racing, one of the premier teams that, you know, they run Tom Martin and Mark Drennan for most of the year, and they've had a very, very strong year with Mark particularly. And unfortunately, it looks like their day is done, but hopefully they'll come back and try racing on this side of the pond another time.
Yeah, it's a tough break. Takashi Oi racing out of Tokyo, Japan. And again, he's here with support from Best Car Magazine as well as Bride, B-R-I-D-E. So really unfortunate for those guys to come all the way out here. And they're so passionate, Mo. Takashi, as well as the other driver coming all the way from Japan. He was also involved in that dust-up. It looks like Takashi in that number 56. These guys are so passionate about it, as well as Tetsuya Yamano. When they come over here, they're taking photographs of everything. They love the fact that there's Mazdas plastered all over this racetrack here at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca. You can tell this means something to them. And
actually, it's not only the drivers and their supporters that came over, but Twitter in Japan are also streaming this event for us. And for the first race we had earlier, the audience size, yet to be verified, was very, very, very large. There was a very significant number of people tuned in to watch the race earlier from Japan. Now it's Sunday morning in Japan. And so to all the folks who tuned in, sorry that one of your countrymen is out of the race so early. And we'll say Ohayo gozaimasu to all of our race fans in Japan.
Was that a Scotsman hitting us a little bit of Japanese?
No.
That was lovely.
That was lovely, but it wasn't Scottish.
What did you say?
I said good morning.
Wow, that's impressive.
We're learning things, Jake, you and I.
That's very impressive.
I got to say.
That's the extent of it, though.
We understand. So good morning. I won't do as good as you, but good morning to everyone in Japan for tuning in and watching. We do really appreciate it. There's a sight you don't want to see, the number 32 of Keith Jensen, who struggled mightily in qualifying yesterday afternoon, which happened right around this 5 o'clock hour. So you hate to see Jensen's day and season come to an end early here. But boy, Patrick Gallagher got aggressive right off that restart, didn't he, Jake?
I was going to say, Patrick Gallagher, you hate to say if there's a winner when a caution comes out. Don't misquote me there in terms of you never want to see that. But if there is, based on when it came out, it would be advantage Patrick Gallagher, because he had worked his way into the front of the field when suddenly that caution came out, the full course caution. Patrick Gallagher now the leader. Kenton Koch works his way into second position. Brian Ortiz third. Robbie Foley, who had a very active race, number 1, is fourth. And then the fastest lap that was turned in the first race was by Robert Stout, who is in the 5th position. You had heard Mo mention in the pre-race Kyle Kaiser, the reigning Indy Lights champion. Kyle Kaiser finds himself right now in the 11th position while you look through, and there's that car on the back of the record being taken away, and the day is going to be done for Keith Jensen.
You know, I got to say this, is we talk about how aggressive Patrick Gallagher got off that restart. You know, he's a wheelman. He's a race car driver, and he'll do anything to win, and he'll do anything, heck, just to race. And they were flying out here from Ohio, and he had some travel trouble, which, Mo, I know you suffered, and a lot of folks are dealing with the effects of, as those terrible wildfires burned just north of here. It's really affected a lot of people's travels. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, that's an absolute non-issue when you think about all the tragedy. But Gallagher was affected flying in, and they laid over in Phoenix, and they couldn't get him here. The long and short of it is his suit bag, his helmet, his race suit, his gloves, his shoes they didn't come to the same airport that Gallagher did. So Thursday, when these guys went out for their 3 sanctioned test sessions that they had here at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca, I haven't seen the photos yet, but I hear that it was absolutely hilarious because Patrick Gallagher was pieced together in all of his safety apparel by other drivers. I heard a rumor that he was wearing Drake Kemper's race suit. And Kemper, I mean, Gallagher's probably got an easy 3 or 4 inches, if not more, on Kemper, and he's in Drake Kemper's fire suit. He had one of the PWC racers' crash helmets. He had gloves. He had race shoes, all from people around the paddock that pitched in. And I said, "Well, how does it feel to be back in your own skin, in your own race gear?" And he goes, "Let's just say I don't ever want to do that again." So it's a funny story, but the biggest thing I draw out of it to both of you is that that's what kind of paddock Global MX-5 Cup Racing is. These guys are some of the most fierce competitors on track, but you know what? When one of them needs help to get out there on track, you'll see these guys do anything to have a good race.
Well, racers want to race. You know, that's the one thing we know is when it comes to racing, racers want to get out there and they want to race. And you are correct in the fact that I don't know of any sport that has the fraternal feeling in terms of racing. And perhaps that's somewhat because of the danger that comes with it. And everybody, every once in a while, unfortunately, you get those reminders of just that inherent danger that comes with it. But the collective nature in which everyone comes together. As we take a look on pit road, this is somebody that was extremely active. We talked about Robbie Foley in race number 1, and there he sits. They take a look underneath, probably an issue, I would think, perhaps with the wishbone in the rear of the car or just the balance being overthrown. But Robbie Foley, good news for him, I guess, would be, if there's any, that this is coming while the course is under caution, but the clock is ticking. And boy, that's got to be a tough situation to sit there and wait.
That's MX-5 Cup official Jay Monet taking a look at the underside of that car. And as we look at that, I should bring up one of the issues. I don't know if any of you guys had the chance to meet, talk with Nico Rieger, who had such a great lap in qualifying, set a track record. As the 56 at Takashi Oi is back on track, we're very happy to see that, one of our Japanese entrants. But Rieger starts the race on pole in race number 1 after winning that Package Super Pole Award. He slips down after the first couple circuits, falls all the way to 10th when it's all said and done. They blew a diff pump. The pump going to the differential went out in that car. So they said they were running around 400 degrees Fahrenheit in that differential, past halfway point for the rest of that race. So that's where you saw the performance really fall off for Nico Rieger. Mo, as you pointed out in pre-race, he did get to start on the pole once again. He's up there fighting with these guys. We're going to get a restart here shortly, but that was the cause of Rieger's kind of lack of performance.
So, and one other thing that's interesting about having a full course yellow this early in the race, there is another prize. BF Goodrich have put up a Are You Driver Enough award for the driver who makes the most passes across both races, a $5,000 award. Now you have Foley in the pits. If he gets back out and he's at the back of the field, he's going to start picking off guys through the field. Foley could be going home with some pocket change here if he can get back out and start passing guys.
You know, I realize that this race has started out under the slow of this caution, but the reality is, folks, if you are maybe for the first time checking out what's going on here in the Mazda MX-5, I can tell you, as someone who watches races throughout a number of different series over the course of the year, the competitive nature of this. And I think it goes back to the fact, Mo, I know that I'm belaboring the point, but these identically matched cars, it really does come down to the skill set, the timing, the decision-making of the driver, and just getting perhaps the best feel, because I wanted to elaborate on it. The reality is that all 18 of these drivers have essentially the same automobile underneath them right now.
Actually, I'm going to say all 19, because the pace car at the front of the field
Very good point.
is actually a fully spec'd MX-5 Cup race car. It has a second seat and it has a light bar on the roof. But that's the only difference between that and the race cars it's leading.
These cars, of course, all put together in North Carolina. Is that correct?
Long Road Racing in North Carolina. They're all identical, as you mentioned. That's what adds to the parity of the series. Earlier in the day, we saw Gallagher and Foley, I think, running up the straight, and absolute identical top speed.
You got to wonder, too, how much Patrick Gallagher, just the strategy, the thought process will change, knowing perhaps it's in the back of his mind, Tony, I got to make sure that I'm keeping everything between the lines here after what happened to him earlier today.
Well, literally, I mean, between the lines is the perfect way to put that, Jake. And I wanted to make the joke right off the green flag when you saw Gallagher go right up the inside. The joke I wanted to make was, well, there's a good thing there's a concrete barrier right there separating the front stretch and the pit lane, so he can't put those left side wheels below the white line. Might not be an in-taste joke for our Patrick Gallagher fans out there. But, yeah, there's track limits at this track. You know, we go to a lot of racetracks. I know we're going to COTA next year where track limits are obviously a huge issue. But here, the penalty for running off track is so great, Mo, that you typically don't see drivers doing it. And where Gallagher found that little bit of space right where they're at now on the inside, it's still exceeding track limits. And so that's where our IndyCar sanctioned race control staff stepped in and said, no, we're gonna take the spot from you. So it was a tough call, but it was the right one.
Now, if he wins this race or runs at the front and Cressy is not as close to the front, then that penalty gets negated and he wins the overall. So if I'm Patrick Gallagher, my strategy is clear off. Get away from these guys and get out and run away with this race. Whether his car and his talent will allow him to get away from the folks he's running with. Kenton Cook, a former series champion, is right behind him. He's certainly not going to let him run away and hide, but we'll see how it develops.
So after a lengthy caution, the pace car's lights are off as that MX-5 Cup car hits pit lane. and we're getting ready to get gridded back up here. Patrick Gallagher and Ken Cook, a former series champion, that number 12, get on the loud pedal and get after it here as they unwind from turn 11. Race 1 went clean and green, Jake. We're back off and running here in race number 2.
And you saw Cook's going to go wherever Gallagher goes. As a matter of fact, he's going to do so right on that rear bumper. This is, of course, the battle for the lead. Gallagher trying to hold off. Cook going to take a look to the inside. Boy, Gallagher really went ahead and went up high, kind of pushed Cook just a little bit. Nice job by Gallagher in doing so. Tony, what's interesting now as we watch them single file, basically what we've done here is shaved off the first third of this race. Now it really comes down to the racing time with 30 minutes left in this race.
When you saw this happen in qualifying yesterday, unfortunately, when there was an off early and they went to a red flag condition, but the clock continues to tick in qualifying. Well, what that did was it took a 20-minute qualifying session, cut it in half, and then these drivers were turned back out with roughly 8 minutes to go in that session, and you saw some really hairy laps in qualifying, which are typically supposed to be obviously clear, spaced out, and clean and green. That was not the case at all. Now it looks like we got a battle for the lead. Kenton Cook right underneath Patrick Gallagher at the top of the hill. Cook goes right around, and it's going to bring the 4 of Brian Ortiz with him. Gallagher, Jake, slips to 3rd just like that.
Yeah, almost wondered for a split second there if something wasn't wrong with that 29 machine, because all of a sudden it looked like he was going to get freight trained. Now, he was able to hold off and not allow Rieger by him, but those first 2 in the form of Coke and as well Ortiz make the slip past him. So now all of a sudden Patrick Gallagher finds himself going from 1st to 3rd within the form of about two or three turns there.
This is so cool to see Kenton Cook running so well, Mo.
And yeah, and Kenton is a superstar. He's raced lots and lots of different kinds of cars. A former Daytona 24-hour winner, Rolex 24 winner in the PC class.
Yep.
Raced a lot of different Mazdas, and it's great to see him out front. A super guy, awesome guy. But second place, Brian Ortiz from Puerto Rico in the Copeland Motorsports car. Remember, Brian was 3rd in the first race.
Yep.
So
he's
Brian's
looking
in with a shot of the overall here.
Kenton Cook is a rock star in this kind of sports car racing, and you know you're doing well in sports car racing when you have the girl who knows everything about sports cars, Shay Adam, cheering for you.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what she's doing as Kenton Cook leads the way here. And you talked about Brian Ortiz. He ran 3rd in that first race. He's looking really strong in 2nd right now. If we're lucky, we might get Shay to come in and say a few words with us, because guys, she knows more about sports car racing than I think we're ever going to learn combined.
No doubt about that. As a matter of fact, she might be waving you off, but I think we should put it to the test. Right now, watching up front, Kenton Cook, and then right behind him, Brian Ortiz. Now, Gallagher is right there. You gap back a little bit before that 4-5 of Rieger, and then Cressy. Keep in mind, Cressy, the winner in race number 1, probably didn't even know that he was the winner at the time the checkered fell. Now Gallagher, who was penalized, allowing Cressy to get that win earlier, is going to try to slip past. I think he's going to get past Ortiz, put Patrick Gallagher back to the 2nd position.
Gallagher to P2 as they hit the top of the hill, now down the corkscrew. That was a really good move. He had a great run through 5, up the momentum through 6, and he put his car right where he needed to. Now down the corkscrew they go. Ken Cook, he's not going to make a mistake in that situation, but neither is Patrick Gallagher. And Mo, you talked about it in pre-race. The sun is starting to set. It's middle of that 5 o'clock hour here on the West Coast. It is beautiful. Gallagher runs about a half a lane narrow on the entry into the final corner of that left-hander, turn number 11. He takes a look, but Jake, as you and I talked about in pre-race before the day began, as well as in race number 1's broadcast, Gallagher is a patient driver, and I think that's a quality, honestly, that he doesn't get enough respect for.
I'll tell you what I'm going to be curious about with that patience, because you and I have talked about it. Again, I go back to, and I always think back, just as I say it, boy, very quick work Gallagher makes, almost made contact, manages to slip to the inside. Nice job there, actually, of Coke of letting Gallagher get past. We'll see if that means that he knows he's got something still in the sling here later in the race. But you have to wonder, Tony, when these drivers are looking at it and they know that they're starting to wind down. You get into the second half of the race, which we haven't reached just yet, but how much of the penalty from earlier comes into play, and how much does it affect your mindset in terms of deciding when and where you can put your race car? That's something that we're going to find out.
I mean, that's a great point, Jake, and Gallagher was mad. I mean, there's no way around it. He was very upset because at the time of podium celebrations, he didn't realize that the penalty was for exceeding track limits. He thought the penalty had something to do with Robbie Foley going around. Well, that's not what it had to do with at all. So Gallagher, I'm not going to say is a man possessed right now, as Ortiz is trying to take the orange paint right off the back of the number 12, Kenton Cook, as they come out of 6 and up to the top of the hill. Now they dive back down through that 4-story drop through the left complex of the corkscrew. But Gallagher, he's not a man possessed, but boy, he knows that he needs to outrun that penalty. And Mo, you set the table perfectly. Gallagher can still win the $75,000. He must win this race. The tiebreaker would only be needed if Cressy finishes in the second position, and unfortunately right now that's not looking like it's going to be the situation. He's P5 currently, but with over 25 minutes of racing still to go, Jake, we know that anything can happen and all of these positions can be swapped a few more times in the next 25 minutes.
It seems as though in the first half of this race that things are a little more conservative than what we saw in the first half of the race earlier today. Now, I say that, and then Cook is going to get right on the rear again of Patrick Gallagher, but you see Gallagher holding him off. But, Mo, when you start dangling in front of drivers the opportunity for that cash prize that is in the balance here, maybe they start thinking about whether or not risk versus reward at this point in the race is something that they have to analyze.
Well, we still have over 26 minutes left in this race. So at this point, you know, Gallagher is a mature young man. He knows how to manage a race. If he can get back on the racetrack.
He's mature, but he likes playing in the dirt a little bit.
Kenton certainly is a mature racer, and Brian Ortiz has been in a lot of different kind of cars. So I think with 26 minutes left in the race, nobody wants to show their cards just yet. I think they're playing a nice follow the leader style, and we'll see what transpires. Give us another 10 minutes or so, and we'll see how aggressive they get.
Boy, Kenton Cook is wearing out the rear bumper of Patrick Gallagher right now as they come out of 6 up to the hill once again. And that backside of the racetrack, guys, seems to be where that momentum really comes into play. And that's where you see guys getting really risky right before they hit the most technical corner in the world, the corkscrew.
Gallagher, of course, as we talked about earlier, being penalized for using outside the line to gain track position. Now, he can't necessarily gain track position because there is no position for him to gain, but he can hold off someone else from gaining track position should that situation present itself again.
That's a really good point, and these guys are trying to make these MX-5 Cup cars as wide as they can, and Gallagher's experienced at that because he's led so much in the 2017 battery tender season. And Kenton Cook, he hasn't raced with us all year. He's been doing a lot of driver coaching and a lot of assistance with teams and their drivers, but boy, he has not missed a beat again, coming off of a great IPC season over with the IMSA Sports Car Series, and he has not missed a beat in these Mazda MX-5 Cup cars. He's right there in second place. He's not probably so much in the running for the $75,000 prize because in race number 1, I'm going to look up and tell you guys where he finished. Cook got out of that one, it looks like, with a 7th place finish. So even a win here would leave him with 8 points in the tally. So unfortunately, due to that 7th, he's probably not so much in the running for the 75 grand, but heck, who doesn't want to win the race?
Well, so that's a good point, Jake. You'd asked about, you know, when the money's on the line, what are these guys thinking? I think the money gets them to enter the race. I think the money gets them excited about the race. Once they click the visor down, they're not racing for the money. Yeah. They're racing because it's what they do and it's deep in their heart. And Kenton certainly is like that. He's a mild-mannered, nice young man, and once he puts a helmet on and clicks the visor down, he becomes a different person.
Earlier today, we saw Patrick Gallagher throughout his multi-lap battle that he was having out on the racetrack. He was doing the old proverbial with Robbie Foley, starting in the inside, then using the outside of the track, trying to hold him off, and eventually was able to make a pounce. That allowed Gallagher to get into the lead. He now becomes the other side of that because Kenton Cook, let's be honest, Tony, Cook is testing every area of the racetrack, and as it is, he starts towards the outside but then dips back in quickly. Gallagher has to get a little bit defensive there, and you got to wonder if Kenton Cook isn't setting him up to ultimately do the old outside and then dip quickly to the inside move on.
No, absolutely, and here's the deal. I haven't had the fortune of getting to call Kenton Cook in as many races. Through my work at IMSA, I've been able to introduce him to a lot of victory lanes, but I haven't been able to watch him as a driver lap after lap after lap. But here's my MO, here's my profile on Kenton Cook. The guy's smart, okay? He's just a smart guy. He's a smart driver. So you're exactly right, Jake. What he's doing right now with this 23 minutes still remaining in this race, he's testing the limit, and he's finding out what Gallagher's going to do here, what he's going to do there. And so he's building a database in his head that says, okay, once we get inside of 2, 3, 4 laps to go, when it's really go time, I know what Gallagher's going to do if I put the nose here. I know what he's going to do if I go here. So Kenton Cook is using his brains to hold station right now and then put in a battle for the lead when it matters the most.
And what you have in third place is Brian Ortiz, who was trying to find out whether or not it's better to kind of get some clean air and go the opposite way of Cook once Cook maneuvers high and then back down to the inside, or is Ortiz better off just getting right on him, maybe getting some of that air coming off of Cook's car, but allowing him to pounce. Now you see those front two start to get a little bit of separation. Rieger is right there should Ortiz have a problem. And then Matt Cressy running in the 5th position. But the story is up front. Patrick Gallagher is the leader. Again, just behind him, you have Kenton Koch, who seems to be able to go exactly and anywhere where Gallagher is.
Yeah, Kenton Koch's doing a great job at staying right in the tire tracks that Patrick Gallagher's BFG's put down in front of him. Rest of the field, you talked about the Copeland Motorsports cars of Brian Ortiz and Nico Rieger run 3rd and 4th. Matt Cressy, Rookie of the Year contender, runs 5th currently. Luke Ochsner out of Northern Colorado in the number 77 currently occupies 6th. Robert Stout, our Rookie of the Year, he was $50,000 richer after we were here 3 weeks ago. He runs 7th. Drake Kemper, who was involved in a really hard off year, he runs 8th as Cressy now throws it to the inside of pole sitter Nico Rieger. That's going to put Cressy now up to the 4th position, drop the CMS car of Nico Rieger, your Paget Pole Award winner, back to 5th, and that puts him right in front of that 77 of Luke Ochsner and the 28 of Robert Stout. Again, just wrapping up the top 10. Sparky runs 9th, your 2016 champion, and then Kyle Kaiser, the Indy Lights champion, making his foray into fender racing. He currently rounds out your top 10, Mo.
So one thing to watch here, if you look carefully on the nose of the Brian Ortiz Copeland Motorsports car in 3rd place, the bodywork is lifting, bodywork is flapping a little bit, and under normal circumstances, no big deal. But remember, these cars are all identical, so the slightest little disadvantage, aero or otherwise, will prohibit Brian from being able to get out and run in clean air in front of these guys. And there's something loose on the front of that car. It's flapping in the wind a little bit. You can see it right there. And that may, if he gets out into clean air, that may inhibit his ability to go forward.
Also makes you wonder how much, as a competitor, if you are aware, if by chance maybe you don't see it, but your crew does, radios it to you. The reality is that goes back to these cars. You may know exactly what he is experiencing as a result of that and understand the vulnerability and get a better idea of where you might be able to make a move on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And these guys, it's all about driver. It's all about what that driver can do with what car he's got underneath him right now. And that's such a cool shot right there, going down the front row of what's probably 1st or I want to say 7th. And they're not hooked to each other right now, guys, but they're all within a corner's distance of making a move. Gallagher starts to defend a little bit. Kenton Koch takes a beautiful wide arcing line through turn 2 down there, the Andretti hairpin, and they've just got these cars rolling so well. This is beautiful. Koch drops the right sides just for a moment there as they set up for the right-hander. Turn number 3, you need to cross the whole track to get back ready for this complex of corners. But these guys, the intensity's picked up here. Money's on the line, Mo, as you said, but boy, once that visor goes down, they just want and they need to win the race. And that's what you see right now is a lot of hungry drivers.
And this 7-car train that have made a little bit of a break from 8th place on back is bookended by the 2 McCumbee McAleer Motorsports teammates, Patrick Gallagher at the front and Robert Stout bringing up the rear of this train. Robert, of course, is sponsored by Lucas Oil Racing TV, who are the presenting sponsor of this live stream, and we thank them very much for bringing this very, very exciting racing to our audience of fans and race enthusiasts from all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Lucas Oil Racing TV stepping up big time, and it's really cool to have Robert's dad, Ken Stout, here. Really, in my opinion, legendary broadcaster, and if you know any kind of North American racing series, MAV TV airs a lot of it, and boy, you know Ken Stout's voice, so it's pretty cool to have his son racing. And just in case you're wondering what's Ken Stout doing, well, he's up on top spotting for Robert at each and every single weekend. So it's definitely a family affair here. Robert's raced all kinds of things. He's raced on dirt, he's raced sprint cars, he's raced Silver Crown cars, he's raced with IMSA, he's raced sports cars, he's done almost everything you can do. And I'll tell you what, he says that he has as much fun, if not more fun, racing these MX-5 Cup cars than anything he's raced, Jake.
Moving into, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I will tell you a story about Robert and Ken Stout. Prior to this race, I was talking to Ken about doing some different kind of duties for us around the racetrack, and he said to me, look, he said, this is my time with my son. When I'm on the radio, this is my time with my son. And as the father of a young man, I can tell you, I absolutely appreciate that, and Mazda is all about family, and we love families and the racing family, the larger racing family that we're a part of. So Robert, Ken rather, congratulations to you, and Robert is certainly representing the family name very well out here.
Absolutely.
Taking a look at that battle, Luke Ochsner and Nico Rieger, that's the battle for 5th position. As a matter of fact, boy, they started to go side by side there. That's Stout that you're taking a look at now. That's the battle for the 7th position, trying to hold off Drake Kemper. The other thing that becomes interesting this time of day, Tony, and that's the following. You can see it right now as we take a look and follow around on the rear of Luke Oxner. They're in sunlight right now, but a great percentage of this track, the Mazda Raceway at Laguna Seca, is under shade. Now, different tracks, you see now they go into a shaded area. Different tracks become more track sensitive in terms of the heat that comes with it. But you start to get into the shade areas of this track, maybe that's a little bit cooler. Maybe the grip isn't there for those BF Goodriches as much. Or perhaps that's when the tires like it the best. That's the kind of thing that Patrick Gallagher and Kenton Cook have to weigh in and think about while they're going out there.
Well, BFG has done a phenomenal job at bringing the perfect tire each and every weekend for us wherever we've been racing, whether it was the season opener at Barber Motorsports Park in Birmingham, Alabama. We saw a really great wet weather tire on what was a rapidly drying track. So BFG, it's been incredible having those guys as the presenting sponsor, but heck, just bringing a great tire each and every weekend. And these three cars you're watching right now are putting the grip and the ability of their BF Goodrich racing tires to the absolute limit. Brian Ortiz is so hungry, Jake, because all year he's been right there. He's had multiple podium finishes. He's finished as high as second place at Road America in the summer, but he's never stood on the top of the podium in 2017 competition. He wants this really bad right now.
Has it within sight right now as well. He, as it stands, would be on the podium, but not P1. That's because it belongs to Patrick Gallagher. Kenton Cook is second, and there is Ortiz. Mo, we had talked about this earlier with Brian Ortiz, but in terms of somebody that obviously many of the people close to him, his friends, family, have so much going on in terms of where he is coming from and representing, but at the same time, you know that's got to be on his mind and in his heart while he's racing.
Well, I chatted to him earlier about after the first race and mentioned that we had talked about Puerto Rico and the challenges they're going through, and of course how much we all feel for them. And frankly, he said to me, unfortunately, there's not that many people be able to watch this because the electricity and the cell towers and everything is destroyed over there. So whether they can see us or not, we certainly send our best wishes there.
Absolutely hope for the best for those folks, no doubt about it. Brian Ortiz right now representing them very well, running in the third position.
Oh, now he wants to make it the second position as they come into 11. Cook and Ortiz are going to go door to door, and Cook knows he's got to go, so he runs right into the back bumper of the 29 of Patrick Gallagher. It's not a hard hit, but they made contact, rear bumper to front bumper, and Ortiz threw it to the inside. Unfortunately, that killed his exit shot, and that's allowed the 51 of Matt Cressy to pull up right around the outside. Now it's going to be Kenton Cook to the inside. He was almost on track exit in pit lane trying to get around Gallagher. It's not going to work.
And Ortiz gets that spot right back by doing the same thing to Cressy had done to him. That was just maintaining your line, letting all heck break loose in front of you, and then all of a sudden you run out of real estate. Cressy was able to pounce in originally and get past Ortiz, but Ortiz does the same right back, so it's right back 1 through 4 the way it was. Gallagher, Cook, Cressy, and Ortiz.
Ortiz wants to take another look. He's got a little bit of drafting help from Matt Cressy, and then Kenton Cook still trying to make something happen with the 29 of Patrick Gallagher. I'll say this. We were here 3 weeks ago for our season finale. I sat in on the drivers' meeting, and Vince Kramer, a race director from IndyCar, talked about how using that pit exit down there below that double white line will not be allowed for gaining position. As we saw, there's already been an issue with track limits. I'll be interested if Kenton Cook receives a warning or not for going that low. He didn't gain the position, Jake, but he was completely down there on pit exit. I have to imagine they're going to be on his radio soon.
It would be so easy to watch this when you watch the drama unfolding. You watch the non-stop racing that's going on, and you would say to yourself, man, these guys have to be having fun. But I'll bet you in the cockpit right now, it's less about necessarily the fun of it and white knuckle focus concentration as Ortiz tries to go low, then goes back up high. He's trying everything he can to get that spot back from Matt Cressy.
Well, you talk about being in the cars for this 45-minute race, the second of the day. Robert Stout told me he's never once received arm pump in his left arm while driving one of these cars because they have assisted steering. He said that he couldn't believe how sore his arms were. And now Patrick Gallagher knows Kenton Cook's thinking about that pit exit lane, so he goes all the way 4 wheels below to defend. Guys, honestly, I don't have an answer, but I'm very interested as what race control will think about that. I'm going to go to work and try to find out what they're thinking.
I'll tell you what, right now, Kenton Cook is thinking about the fact that, at least to the eye, it appears as though his car might be a little more agreeable on this racetrack because he seemingly has control of it no matter where he wants to go. Gallagher is trying to use that slipstream a little bit, disrupt the air for Kenton Koch. But Koch, when he does so, is able to keep his car whichever line he'd like. You see now he's going to test to the outside. Ortiz is going to try to go with him. Gallagher manages to hold both of them off. Cressy is right there, and then Luke Oxner. That's the back of that front five. Pretty good gap back before you get to Robert Stout. You watch Gallagher up front, behind him again, Kenton Koch. Now, earlier, Koch was going right where Gallagher was. Now, seemingly, he's going kind of weaving back and forth. Question is he doing that to set up Gallagher, or is he doing it to find out exactly what the best line is for the agreeability of that 12 machine that's going to let him try to make a move?
I think at this point he knows where his car needs to be, in all honesty. So when he moves, he's making and deviating from the traditional
And he's
racing
not tipping
line.
his hand as to where it is at this point.
No, I think any moves you're seeing, it's Koch trying to do his best to figure something out. And Gallagher's running your very traditional defensive line right now, where he comes off of the preceding corner, stays shallow into the next corner as to cut off any diving attempt that the cars behind him might have. Gallagher dropped the wheels on the exit of 11. That opens the door for Koch and Ortiz to go side by side. Ortiz has a great run out of 11, and it seems like he's going to have the motor to go right around Koch. He has not cleared him yet, not completely. Koch's going to swing out way wide and use that high side to get the most he can momentum-wise, but it's not going to be enough. Brian Ortiz clears the number 12 of Kenton Koch and moves to the second position. Great series of corners right there by Brian Ortiz.
Boy, and I'll tell you what, Cressy was hoping that Koch would stay out just long enough to let him slip into that third spot, but Koch was aware that Cressy was there, and so Cressy maintains in the fourth position. Oxner didn't let Cressy get away from him, so again, that formation 1 through 5, same distance between them, but that battle for second has now been resolved with Ortiz and Koch swapping spots.
Man, what a good move by Ortiz, Mo.
35 minutes into this race, just about 35 minutes into this race. We're at a point now, the BF Goodrich tires are excellent, and they can easily be strong for 45 minutes for the length of the race.
Oh, yeah.
But different drivers are more aggressive on their tires than others. Kenton Koch is one of those drivers who's very, very smooth. And he may have, if he gets close enough to the front, he may have tires left at the end of this race to go challenge the other guys where theirs might have just lost their edge.
Well, you bring up a great point. You talk about tire pressures and what these guys went out on and what they all like and the heat cycles that these go through. They definitely went through a heat cycle off that very first lap. They got warmed up under the pre-race caution lap, and then they got hot. But, boy, that first caution came out, and they cooled back off. So this is the second or third heat cycle of this race alone that all these BFGs are on. So you bring up a great point. It's tire management in these 45-minute sprint races.
Yeah, and I know Pete Calhoun from BF Goodrich, who's a huge supporter of this series and is at every race. He can't be here this weekend, but I do know he's watching us on Facebook. So welcome, Pete. We could use your input on tires here. It looks like...
Cressy wanted to take a look, but it's going to be Koch using the 4 of Ortiz as a pick. Jake, that was amazing. It's almost like Koch knew Cressy was going for it, so he ran wide and let the 4 of Ortiz kind of block.
And then all of a sudden he had to get back down because he started to kick up that dirt, wanted to make sure that he got back into the middle of the racing groove. So even though standing-wise it does not make any effect 1 through 4, you gotta feel like Kenton Koch knows the time is now, and he is going to work Ortiz the way he had tried to do for so many circuits for Gallagher. Now going to bounce down to the inside, and we'll see once again Ortiz. Boy, they are so close together. That is really good discipline racing. Cressy now going to try to go where Koch goes.
Oh, man, Koch had a great look on the inside of the exit of 5 of Brian Ortiz, and you guys saw it right here. As they came through, our camera angle didn't really show us exactly how much space there was between them because there wasn't a lot, and I winced. I was really afraid we were going to see someone going for a slide, but Kenton Koch, you perfect word, Jake, disciplined racing, and that's exactly what Kenton Koch displayed right there, was discipline. He knows how wide that MX-5 Cup car is, and he's not going to overuse it.
Think about the respect you've got to have for your competitor as well. To know that you're going into a turn, you're that close to one another, and you just have to trust that everybody, look, you're racing hard. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, that nobody's going to get too aggressive and jerk. In the last 8 minutes, we'll see if the aggressive goes up. Yes, it does. Ortiz is going to go now over. Brian Ortiz made contact with Kenton Koch, and that car now is upside down. And Brian Ortiz has come to a stop here as the caution will come out.
I can tell you exactly how that happened. They came out of 10, and Ortiz slid a little wide on the exit of 10, which we've seen drivers do all weekend. They slid wide, and then when he tried to come back onto track, the 12 of Kenton Koch was there. And we're going to try to get a replay right here as he went for a bounce through 11. I think they're going to cue it up for us right here as the field is under the control of the safety car. There you see Ortiz runs wide on the exit of 10. Cook holds his line, does not give up any room. He shouldn't have to. Ortiz tries to come back on track. Those two make contact side to side, and boy, it jacked the right side of Ortiz's car up in the air, and after that, he was just kind of along for the ride.
And that car comes to a stop, and Brian Ortiz that we had talked about, now the field behind the pace car. The leader is Patrick Gallagher. Behind him would be Matt Cresci, then Kenton Cook. Luke Oxner, Robert Stout rounding out the top 5. The clock is ticking on this second race here at Laguna Seca. And of course, our hope is that Brian Ortiz is okay inside of that machine as they work underneath it.
So as we wait to see how Brian Ortiz does out of this car, I just want to let you know Peter Calhoun from BF Goodrich has dropped us a note to say that race 2 would have started on stickers, so wear and heat cycles are not an issue. Shouldn't be an issue as we see the end of this race.
Well, Pete Calhoun, we appreciate you chiming in. It's probably not the first time this weekend I've been wrong, but yeah, that's a good point. They started on stickers, so heat cycles wouldn't have to be such an issue. We are under a full course yellow here, so quickly we're going to step aside and identify some of the great partners that make this weekend of racing possible. Mazda, zoom, zoom. It's the old slogan, Mo, and it's great to see a commercial. Not the best reason, unfortunately, as there's a live look at the field coming to a full stop here on pit lane as the sun slowly sets in Monterey, California. It's an unfortunate situation.
So let's talk about these cars. The roll cage that's in these cars and the harnesses and the seats, everything we have in these cars are FIA certified.
Yep.
They're all built to very, very high standards. And for Brian Ortiz, we hope to see him walk away from this car here soon, but the environment he's in could not have been stronger, could not have been built better, let me put it that way.
You bring up a great point about the roll cages. This is one of my favorite points about what long road racing does for these cars. Mo, FIA certified, NASA certified, SCCA certified, and IMSA certified. So if you own an MX-5 Cup car, which some do who aren't even here racing this weekend, you can take that car, and with the roll cage and the safety certifications inside of it, you can run at an event that's put on by IMSA, that's put on by the SCCA, by NASA if you're doing the local track day lapping kind of thing, or the FIA even. So that's a really cool feature. You bring that up, and I normally try to mention that in almost every race broadcast because I think that's just an incredible feature that these cars have. And inside of that roll cage, there you see our leader, Patrick Gallagher, in the number 29. The clock has stopped here with 6.5 minutes to go in the session, and I'm not sure if we're going to get back to racing. We are the last event on the schedule here for the day at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca, I believe, so we may be given a few liberties since there's not a hard deadline to meet here, Jake.
The other thing that I want to point out, and admittedly, in working with the Verizon IndyCar Series, Indy Lights, that has its own traveling safety team, the Hamatro safety crew that travels with them at each and every race. But for Brian Ortiz, when that car, gentlemen, this is the bottom line. That car got upside down and was rolling. We went to another camera shot to the front of the field. By the time, which was not long, we went back to see Brian Ortiz. The safety team was already there. So kudos to the safety team here at Laguna Seca and the fact that Brian Ortiz was tended to almost immediately once that car had come to a stop. And of course, we hope for the best in terms of his status, and there you see it.
Brian.
That's the best news that you're going to see all day. That is Brian Ortiz, as you see, and one can assume, understandably so, perhaps a little bit discombobulated, I'm sure incredulous as to what happened, but the best news is Brian Ortiz now undoing that fire suit, and he has walked away. Mo, as we take another look at it now, and you see that car getting loose, you talked about the safety. You talked about the way these cars are assembled in North Carolina. You talked about the commitment to making sure the drivers are safe. You're looking at essentially, what, 3 or 4 different complete rollovers for Brian Ortiz and walking away from that Mazda, and that is great to see.
It's so good to see Brian walking away from that. I've only ever seen one of these cars upside down once before. Remember Tim Probert got upside down in Barber off the grid?
We started our season in Alabama with a flip, and we end it, unfortunately, here on the West Coast with a rollover. We can joke about it now because both Tim Probert and Brian Ortiz walked away. But discombobulated, and I can't even remember the other word you used, Jake, but those were important-sounding words.
I think incredulous.
Incredulous, boy.
But one other thing we should note here, turn 11 here at Mazda Raceway, he didn't hit anything other than the ground. He didn't make contact with the wall. He didn't get to the barrier. He didn't get to a fence or a K-wall. And that's down to the racetrack. That's down to Mazda Raceway doing what's important to make sure that they provide these guys the safest racing environment that they can.
I don't think you can say enough, though, can you, about just the strength of, and I hope I'm using the right term for Mazda, but the roll cage of that car. I mean, just to be able to, to withstand what that car withstood. As now the red flag condition, you take a look, that is the leader. That's the 29 machine of Patrick Gallagher trying to win. And now we can go back to talking about that cash prize, because of course when you don't know the overall safety or health of a driver, that becomes secondary. We now know that Brian Ortiz walked away, so let's go back to talking about that $75,000 that hangs in the balance. I mentioned it earlier, Mo, you could actually buy yourself one of these cars for that and still have 10 grand to put in the bank, right?
Sure, yeah, actually a little more. Here's the interesting thing. Cressy now sits in second place.
I was just going to say that.
If we go back to green for a, what would it be, a 6-minute shootout?
Yeah, roughly 3 laps.
The difference between Cressy passing Gallagher and not
is $75,000. True, yeah, the difference is 50 grand.
Is $50,000
between first and second.
So how aggressive is he going to be? How aggressive is Cressy going to be to try and boost his daily
income
stipend by $50,000?
You know, and you wonder, to be honest with you, how much of that also plays in when he's determining his aggression on where Kenton Cook is on him, because that might cause him to run out of real estate just a little bit, because the reality is he's got to make the decision, look, do I want to put myself in position where I might fall from second to, let's say, 4th or 5th? Should I get hung out, or do I go ahead and go for it? You would assume that he's going to go ahead and go for it, but you've got some pretty savvy guys just behind him. Kenton Cook, as well as Luke Oxner and Robert Stout. So a lot to think about right now if you're Matt Cressy.
Well, that was a really cool shot we just saw in pit lane of from the right rear side of that car as they tow Brian Ortiz's car out, which is going to be a few-minute project at least. But they had a really cool shot for us of Matt Cressy sitting in the seat and his helmet on and his visor up and trying to stay cool. But as you're talking, Jake, about what's going through his head, I mean, we were looking at it, and the internal battle and discussion that he's probably having at that moment. And you better believe, as Mo talks about, there's a $50,000 difference between finishing first and finishing second. If you think Matt Cressy isn't aware of that, that could buy a lot of chalk and erasers for the school that he teaches for people who want to learn how to drive standard transmission vehicles. So Matt Cressy certainly aware and has got quite the mental quandary going on right now.
Pit lane marshals are giving the signal to fire up again. It looks like we're going to go racing. A 6-minute, 30-second shootout. 4 laps?
Yeah, I think 4 laps roughly, no more than that certainly. But I'll tell you this, just before we get going, and it's rare that we get breaks like this in these MX-5 Cup races, Mo, I've just got to say, Jake, it's been awesome having you with us. It really has been.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
look, this is, guys, I mentioned it. You know, I'm very fortunate to be able to go around and watch a lot of racing, and I'm fortunate to see a lot of very talented race car drivers and work with talented guys. This is a lot of fun. I'm watching, you know, I'm working with fun guys, I'm working with talented guys, and I'm watching a great form of racing. That the other thing that's so much fun about it is I'm watching a great form of racing that's sponsored by an organization that wants to commit towards helping drivers move up through that Mazda road to Indy and work their way up. You never know when all of a sudden you say to yourself, holy cow, I'm watching a guy, whether it be running at Long Beach or somewhere else, that I watched 5 years ago running the Mazda MX-5. It's very, very cool.
That's a great point, and I'll tell you why I chuckle. 5 years ago, end of 2012, I went to the SCCA runoffs, and I met a young driver who was just starting out into running some regional stuff and wanted to step up, and that young driver was Patrick Gallagher. And now look at him. He's a front runner in this series. He won the championship this year.
He's $200,000 richer after winning the battery tender championship this season, and he's roughly 6.5 minutes and one very determined Matt Cressy away from becoming an additional $75,000 richer. So it's really cool. And just as I was saying to Jake, it's been great having him up here in the booth with us on loan from IndyCar Radio Network. And Mo, of course, to you and everyone at Mazda, thank you for all the support. Thanks for being up here, first of all, and thanks to you and everything that you and John and Kyle and Jade and everyone at Mazda do for the development of not only junior racing, but junior talent, because that's exactly what, as Jake said, the Mazda Road to Indy and the Mazda Road to 24 is. You guys are growing America's racing future.
Well, thank you. It's certainly something that Mazda is fully committed to. It's not something we have to think about much because it's in our DNA. Our CEO, Mazda North American CEO, Moro-san, is here this weekend. That's how important this kind of racing is. We have a large contingent of Mazda folks from Japan here this weekend. But most importantly, if we're thanking people, most importantly, I want to thank all the folks watching on Facebook or Twitter in Japan, or MazdaLive.com, or Fans Choice TV, and of course, Lucas Oil Racing TV, who are the presenting sponsor of this live stream, and it's been nothing but exciting, both races. I want to thank those folks because that's the reason we do this. That's the reason we're out here.
Well, it's just a shame when we have really great racing week in and week out on the Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup presented by BF Goodrich Tires, and not everyone gets to see it. I feel bad. I'm the PA guy. I'm lucky I get to go see this racing all over the continent, but it's unfortunate that other people don't get to see it. So things are kind of wrapping up in a storybook way here for 2017. We started the year with a rollover. We're going to end it with a rollover, as that looks like the 56 of Takashi Oi up and out of his car, and he's showing it to the folks at home. I think he's showing you how durable the Mazda product is, Mo. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to see the end of this one.
He's a very funny guy. Spent some time with him this weekend. He's thoroughly enjoyed his time here, I can tell you that. I'm sure he would like to have not come home with a wrecked car, but they've had a lot of fun, the Japanese contingent.
Now, if I'm to see him tomorrow morning, can you tell me again, Mo, how it is that I say good morning in Japanese?
Ohio. Think of Patrick Gallagher. O-H-I-O. Koshaimasu.
Ohio Koshaimasu. See, I was just testing to see if you had that written down. Or
right, no, he was
That's
quick.
impressive.
He was good with that, Mo.
Yeah.
We're all
Mo was all over that.
Rosetta Stone is paying off.
That was impressive. Very impressive.
So I grew up in Ireland. I have lots of Irish heritage, and when my kids asked me, how do you say good morning in Japanese, I said, oh, hi, Uncle Seamus.
Makes it easy, right?
It's not exactly right, but
no, but it's close, and we appreciate the effort. We learned something here today. We learned how great Mazda MX-5 Cup racing is, and we learned how to greet our friends in Japanese.
Exactly.
And speaking of Ohio, that is Patrick Gallagher's home state, and right now, Patrick Gallagher from Ohio at the front of this field in California, and Matt Cresci and Kenton Cook are very interested spectators. Don't rule out Luke Oxner either, should there be something that happened in front of him. And this last stint, if you will, this last dash for the cash, he's going to be a very interested spectator.
So they come into turn 11 for what more than likely will be the final time. Mo, the clock restarted once the red flag was lifted. 4.5 minutes to go. We're getting ready to go back racing.
But Kenton Cook is on pit road.
I had to say, I imagine there had to be front toe damage to that race car after getting hit as hard as he did by Brian Ortiz. So it's not what you want to see as we go back to racing, but I meant to say that under caution. There's no way the front end of that MX-5 Cup car took that hit as hard as it did and didn't receive some sort of damage. I imagine either rim damage or the toe has been knocked out of that MX-5 Cup car, unfortunately, for Kenton Cook.
Boy, look how late Patrick Gallagher decided to brake, but that allowed Cresci to have to do the same. Little bit of dirt kicked up by Luke Oxner running in third. They're going to try to take a look to the high side of Gallagher. Not going to make it work. Patrick Gallagher here trying to hold off and win this second race of the weekend.
And that's what it's all about. He has to win this race. He wants to get that 1 point that it's awarded to the winner. He's already got 2 from being scored in second. But here comes Luke Oxner out of 4 with a monster run on the 51 of Cresci. Oxner wants second. He wants the lead too. It's not going to work, but man, what a superhero move by Oxner. Jake, it looks like he's going to complete the pass. He's not able to totally seal the deal yet. And there he goes. As they come up through 6, he closes the door on Matt Cresci. Oxner around the outside for P2.
And Robert Stout almost made that 3 wide, as a matter of fact. He was trying very hard to break into that top 3. This was to the advantage of Patrick Gallagher. He now has a buffer between himself and Matt Cresci, but that buffer is a very aggressive Luke Oxner.
Boy, and here comes Robert Stout as he's given our 2016 champion Nathaniel Sparks a run for his money. That's going to put Robert Stout now up to what should be the 4th position, as boy, he's having a great run with Sparky, as well as the 01 and Nico Rieger's involved. They're coming down to see 2.5 minutes to go. Nobody's safe in this one, Mo.
No, this is very exciting. Robert Stout had dropped off the end of that pack before we went to red flag, and now he's right back in the thick of things.
Taking a look at it as you watch, you are looking in right now. That is Nathaniel Sparks. Then you have this morning's pole sitter, Nico Rieger, running just behind him. But the story is also at the front. There you see it. Patrick Gallagher trying to hold off Luke Oxner, and then Matt Cressy is right there as well. Gallagher is maintaining a pretty clean line here, but he knows that he's got Oxner behind him doing everything he can, looking at every inch of the racetrack, trying bottom, trying high, trying to see where he can peek in and get past that 29 machine.
Boy, Oxner looks so good, and I know I sound like a broken record, but I got to cheer for the home state kid out of northern Colorado. He's run so well in 2017, guys, but bad luck has just plagued him all season long. So for him to come out, have great pace to start the weekend, and be able to maintain it, most importantly, through two very action-packed and intense races, this speaks well to the credibility of the driver that Luke Oxner truly is. So I've just got to say, it's really great to see him run so well, but it's awesome to see Matt Cressy and Robert Stout and Nathaniel Sparks, all of these drivers up there fighting with our 2017 champion. That goes to prove to you the parity inside this MX-5 Cup racing.
Kyle Kaiser, the reigning Indy Lights champion, who next year hopes to be in the Verizon IndyCar Series, has worked his way into the 6th position. He is behind the former series winner, Nathaniel Sparks, running in 5th. Then, of course, 4th, Stout, Cressy in 3rd, Oxner in 2nd, and Gallagher now with a little bit more of a comfortable gap. Perhaps let's call it 2 car lengths. Patrick Gallagher is your leader.
They come through 11 for what more than likely will be the white flag. It's a heads-up race here. If Gallagher can hold on for the next lap, he is your shootout winner. He's your global challenge winner, and he's $75,000 richer. Luke Oxner can't really spoil this. If he wins it, unfortunately, he's not in the running. And if Matt Cressy can find his way around the 2 cars ahead of him, which could happen on the final lap, Cressy is your winner. It's basically up between the 29 and the 51 with 1 lap to go, guys.
If there's any driver that knows about last second, last corner, last straight passes, it's indeed Patrick Gallagher.
Yep.
He has himself done it over the course of this season. That helped catapult him to a championship. But right now, he's got to hope that he's able to hold off Luke Oxner if Oxner's going to try to do that. A third of the way through the lap, Gallagher, with a good run and a clean run, has managed to extend his lead just a bit.
The lead pack comes through 3, now out of 4. They get on the brakes and hit the left-hander. Turn number 5, 1/2 lap of racing still to go, and Gallagher looks as good as the 2017 champion should. He's out in front, and I'm not going to say pulling away, Jake, but he looks comfortable as they head for the corkscrew for
Front
the final
5
time.
have pretty much checked out from that 6th place machine. That would be Kaiser, Gallagher, and Oxner, what we're keeping our eye on up front. Then Cressy running in the 3rd position, but Gallagher, again, a comfortable advantage. If Oxner's going to try to make a move, he's running out of opportunity.
I'll tell you what, Nathaniel Sparks just did a very honorable thing. He was about to send Robert Stout for a ride through the corkscrew, and we saw him nail the brakes, and those lights came on. He kept Robert Stout in one piece going through the corkscrew, and that's an honorable thing. And a guy like Sparky is known for racing hard, but racing clean. Up front, it's going to be Cressy taking one last look to the inside of Oxner. Too little, too late, because up front, it's decided. He won $200,000 here 3 weeks ago as your champion. He's going to leave here $75,000 richer. Ladies and gentlemen, your global challenge winner, the number 29 of Patrick Gallagher, outruns Luke Oxner to the line.
Gallagher did the same thing that we saw him do earlier today, and that was beat his competitors to the checkered flag as he waves that arm in the air, the Ohioan. That is Patrick Gallagher. We take a look at a machine now down towards the back of the pack. That is Bart Wobbin, who got off. But let's take a look at Patrick Gallagher celebrating here, and the fact that he gets that $75,000, and we'll see what happened here. Oh, a little bit of...
So Bart Wobbin is one of our European drivers, as is Assen, and both of them get together right on the last lap, last corner, and end their California adventure in the gravel trap.
And so as a result of that, Bart Wobbin had to sit and watch, and what he is watching is Patrick Gallagher with that fist in the air. Again, to recap for you the top 10, Patrick Gallagher is your winner. Luke Oxner finishing in 2nd. Matt Cressy rounds out the podium in 3rd. Robert Stout 4th. Nathaniel Sparks, the former series champion, in 5th. Kyle Kaiser, the reigning Indy Lights champion, in 6th position. Nico Rager, who started this race this morning on pole, finishes 7th. Drake Kemper in 8th. Glenn McGee 9th. And John Dean the 3rd rounds out the top 10. The other story that happened in this race, that was Brian Ortiz, who was so good, so strong throughout the course of the first half of this race, having an incident that caused his car to roll. The good news is that Mazda MX-5, Brian Ortiz, walked away from it. And that, Mo, here's the bottom line. This is all about the money. It's all about Patrick Gallagher. It's all about celebrating this prize for him, the $75,000 commitment from Mazda. But Brian Ortiz getting out of that car might have been the best image of the day.
No question. That was the highlight for me, watching him walk away from that car. That was a massive accident, and seeing him walk away was awesome. Let's mention just for a second the team that Patrick Gallagher drives for, and Robert Stout, in fact. McCumbee Racing, Chad McCumbee and Stephen McAleer. They both race in the IMSA Continental Tire Challenge Series for Mazda, and they formed this team 2 years ago and have won Team of the Year. Their presentation is second to none. They've run at the front all year. Both Robert and Patrick have had wins this year. And not only is this a great win for our current champion, our 2017 champion, but it's a great win for the team. And they've done that all year. They've delivered for their drivers. They've delivered for the fans. And a big congratulations to the McCumbee McAleer race team.
Patrick Gallagher, you mentioned, a recent graduate, Ohio State University. And Mo, this is a young man, still a young man, but one that you've known since he was a younger man, as you had mentioned.
That's right, yeah. Good guy on his way, starting out in life in his early 20s. Very, very sponsor friendly. He loves the sponsors on the car, ModSpace and Howard Concrete Pumps. And of course, CJ Wilson, also a former Mazda racer. CJ, of course, had a great baseball career before turning his hand to sports car racing. You know, the sponsors obviously make this happen for these guys, and I think Patrick's amply rewarded them.
Patrick Gallagher is sitting in the car. His team came over to offer their congratulations. ModSpace is the sponsor. Just behind him, Luke Oxner, you can see in that 77 machine. And I'll tell you what, Patrick Gallagher was white-knuckling with both hands on the wheel throughout the course of this race, but he only has one hand on him the last 10 minutes because he's had that left hand in the air celebrating this one for a while. What a way. There's only so many things you can do when you're a season champion to be able to catapult yourself into an off-season in terms of your Mazda MX-5 driving, but this is the way to go out on the right note, Mo Murray.
Yeah, and of course Patrick now has the challenge of deciding what to race next year because he won the championship here. He won the scholarship, $200,000, which he can take to another Mazda-powered series. And now he has $75,000 in cash.
Tell me which series what options that gives him.
It's his choice. He could go to Continental. He could run the Mazda-powered Elan chassis in the IMSA Prototype Lights series. Could do a Pirelli World Challenge campaign. He maybe even could stay in MX-5 Cup. We've had that happen in the past, although the intent of the scholarship is to graduate drivers through the class. But he gets to make that decision, and obviously he'll get counsel from the leadership of Mazda to make sure he's making the right decision, and we'll help him you know, talk to teams and that kind of stuff. But essentially the role of the scholarship, or the role of Mazda, is to let the drivers make their own decision. We don't want to be in the business of pairing drivers and teams together. We think that's part of their development, is they have to get out there and understand the politics and the commercial side of the sport also.
Just a spectacular look right there at the Mazda Raceway at Laguna Seca. And Mo, what a perfect place to kind of put a cap on it for Patrick Gallagher, if you will, when it comes to Mazda, because from the time you pull in this facility, there are different Mazda vehicles that dot around the landscape here in terms of just about everything. If Mazda makes it, it's on display here at Laguna Seca,
that's
right?
True. That's true. The pace cars are all Mazdas. One of the most exciting ones is on the road up from Highway 68. We have added a new feature. There's a large format painting. It's probably 40 feet long. And there's two of them at the moment. We're adding one in the future. There's two of them. One is of Wayne Rainey, the legendary motorcycle racer who won 3 world championships for Mazda and is very close to the leadership or the management of this racetrack. But the other is the Mazda 787B that won Le Mans in 1991. The only Japanese car company to ever win Le Mans, the overall. And I did have the great pleasure recently of meeting one of the 3 drivers who won that race, Volker Wiedler. And that's a great tribute to what Mazda's done in the past. But really what we're focused on is where Mazda's going with the future, with the product lineup. And that's why you see cars dotted around the facility, new cars, new models. It's an exciting place for me.
Beautiful facility. We take a look at it. 11 turns, 2.4 miles. No one mastered it better in races 1 and 2 than Patrick Gallagher. That's the reason why he's walking out of here $75,000 richer and gets the pleasure of talking to Tony. Tony?
Jake, I don't know what he's more happy about, the $75,000 we're going to, you're already getting the questions down here. What are you going to buy? We'll get to that in a minute. Congratulations on the win here in the Global Challenge. Tell me about how heart-stopping those last 10 minutes were.
And I'm not really sure what happened. Went through the day thinking someone wanted us to win. I didn't know. But, you know, with all that happened, first racing bumped to second, red flag there. Obviously, that is.
We'll check back in with Patrick in just a second down there with Tony. Again, obviously elated in the fact that that prize money comes to him. And here's the thing, Mo, when you look at a guy like Patrick, so even keel half the time, and sometimes you wonder if maybe that's not part of what makes him the race car driver that he is, because he knows when go time is, he knows when back off time is, but sometimes racing can become a mental thing, and obviously he's got that focus to be able to accomplish.
Yeah, and even keel is a good word to describe Patrick. He's very, very chill. He's just he has a lot of fun in the race car. He takes it very seriously and he pushes hard. But he's a steady Eddie kind of guy.
Again, Patrick Gallagher, your winner. Luke Oxner, second. Matt Cresci is in third. It was so much fun winning and talking to the winner. We're going to try it a second time. Tony?
Yeah, thanks a bunch, Jake. Sorry, we're in a little bit better position down here in Victory Lane. Patrick Gallagher, you were talking about your sponsors that made this weekend possible.
Yeah, you know, ModSpace has been with me for a long time, and Howard Concrete Pumping, those guys have been with me since day one. We just brought on CJ Wilson Mazda and ZoomZoomNation.com. It's just incredible to have those guys on my McCumbee McAleer car, and all the boys at the team, Chad and Steven, Jim, and everyone involved in this program. It's unbelievable. Super excited for those people involved in this, and great way to end the year. I think it's fitting.
And now, of course, the fun question, $75,000 richer. It's not a scholarship check. It's straight cash. Where's that money going?
Good question, man. I don't know.
Everybody joked up in the booth, you know, you could buy another MX-5 Cup car and still have a lot of cash left over. Are you just going to reinvest in your 2018 campaign, or are we going to go have some fun?
I think we'll have a little bit of fun, but yeah, ideas to go racing in 2018 and something really special. So we're working with the scholarship, and then now that we have the extra 75, it certainly makes it easier. But hats off to Mazda for everything they do, man. I mean, there's no other company putting up $75,000 for a race in a lower pro-level series. So unbelievable. Can't believe we won it. Super excited. And thanks to everyone who supported me all the way. I know I got a bunch of people back home watching.
2017 Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup champion, and today the Battery Tender Global MX-5 Cup Challenge winner. $200 grand for the championship, $75,000 for the Global Challenge. Patrick Gallagher, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Patrick Gallagher. We're going to see who else is down here in Victory Lane. I think we've got Matt Cresci, who we talked to in second place. Let's go join Luke Oxner really quick. I'm going to go get him, guys, and bring him back over here to us if we can have Luke Oxner for just a quick minute.
Sounds good. Mo, before we know it, 2018 is going to be here, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, for the top program in Mazda's motorsports backpack, let's call it that, the IMSA prototype championship in the WeatherTech series, we're already deep into testing. We're already working hard on that. That starts in Daytona, which is a stone's throw away. I mean, it's the Rolex 24 is coming up way quicker than we're comfortable with.
At what point do you start to know which drivers? Think about this for a second, you know, just in terms of how many we will expect to see next year and when that off season all kind of comes together in terms of who may be back. Maybe one of them will be Luke Oxner or Matt Cresci. Tony's down there with one of them, I believe.
You know, it's pretty cool to go all around the country and hang out with race car drivers and watch great racing. That's what we get to do here at Mazda MX-5 Cup Racing. But as a Northern Colorado guy myself, I'm always happy to see the car that flies the Colorado flag proudly do so well. And Luke Oxner, I talked about it a lot during the race. You've had a tough 2017 on the Battery Tender regular season championship. You guys have had the pace, but bad luck has always come up to bite you guys at the last minute. This weekend, though, had to be medicine for the soul.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like you said, you know, we've had a lot of speed all season long. The car's been fast. I've had some good moments and some not so good moments, and then just some plain bad luck. So it's pretty cool we were able to finish out the season on a high note for sure. I do hate that it kind of came at the expense of what happened with Brian. You know, I'm just glad he's okay. That's kind of the most important thing out of this one. But, man, just so stoked for my guys. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, it has been a long time coming, and it's not like you haven't had the pace to be up there in battle with the front runners all year. But to be fair, this kind of was the first time all season that you really battled wheel-to-wheel with the front runners. How intense was that, especially in a race like this where so much was on the line?
Man, it's crazy. It's the biggest thing I've had to learn this year as far as like how I'm driving and stuff is just racing with these guys because they're all so good, they're all so competitive, and it's just like tooth and nail for every little bit. And that race, my whole plan, like I got to that back of that pack and I was just going to hang out, not make any dumb moves, and just kind of hope something came to me, and that's what I did. So it panned out.
You drove a great weekend, Luke. Congratulations.
Thank you, Tony.
Again, Luke Oxer, second-place finisher. We're going to get ready to go upstairs and start victory lane, so we're going to go back upstairs to Jake and Mo. But for the final time down here, I just want to say thanks to everyone at Mazda, Anderson Promotions, and IndyCar for an incredible 2017 season. And for everybody back at home watching, we hope you enjoyed the racing. We had a lot of fun bringing it to you. We're getting ready to start we're getting ready to start victory lane down here. So until next time, we'll see you down the road.
Much appreciated, Tony. Mo Murray as well. Much appreciated to allow me to come in and play with you guys. Great racing here, and it lived up to the billing. We knew it was going to be fun. We knew it was going to be exciting, and we knew somebody was going to be happy with that $75,000. Great job by Mazda.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Tony. Great couple of races. I don't know how we could match those when the season starts next year, but I know we're going to try.
A reminder to look for Mazda MX-5 Cup on Facebook. Also, you can follow in the offseason on Twitter at Global MX-5 Cup. For the final time from the Mazda Raceway at Laguna Seca in Monterey Peninsula, California, I'm Jake Query for Mo Murray and Tony Laporta. Have a wonderful, wonderful remainder of the day or evening, depending on where you are, and we'll talk to you next time for the Mazda MX-5.